what you would do.
Yeah,
and
I'm
you,
hitting the
and
button.
you said the heck with it. I'm hitting the button. It's go time, baby.
Fire in the hole, and we are live. Let's do our normal thing. Double check notifications. They're exactly zero. Oh, wait, we have one person watching. Might be our guest. So, but at least we know our guest is actually watching the show.
Well, the part of watching, the show and being the guest, that would be problematic.
Yes, it would be. Let's see. Oh, we're on Louisiana Watch. I got to make sure I flip over to the right profile.
Well, I have not gotten my Twitter notification, so there'll be a little bit of a doubt there.
Oh,
Hey,
wait,
everybody,
we're on Facebook.
is any
Look,
of
I
you
can
on
hear us.
YouTube?
Well, we got 11 people watching for what that's worth. I see a couple of comments in here, so that's good. Let me check
Yep.
YouTube, do our normal thing. Part of our normal routine. If we didn't check all this stuff, then it would not be normal. Let's see. Anyway, so what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, what's the show going to be about tonight?
Well, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of content other than we've got an amazing guest that's going to be on the show. John Nickelson, candidate for sheriff of Caddo Parish, and arguably, I would think that's probably one of the more important uh, positions in Caddo Parish. That is worthy of people paying attention to because. Look, they had an election. It came down to one vote, and boy, I'll tell you, that was an amazing race. And
Well, yeah, aside from the important things that the sheriff of any parish does, I'm interested in, discussing a little bit of that race because you're right. It was literally one vote went through the court system and all that, and they decided, no, you guys got to have another election.
yeah, so we're gonna get one of the candidates, John Nicholson. He's going to be on. They a lot of folks know they were not able to have a debate. I think because I don't think it's because of John. I think John Nicholson wanted to debate, but I think his opponent, Mr. Whitehorn, didn't want to debate. And we'll cover that with him and, a lot of the intricacies of the race. So I think that probably before we get John on and we'll have a little bit of dialogue, we go to our intro. That'll give us some time to share it out and hopefully ask some of y'all to, do the same. Share the show out for us, especially to some of your Caddo Parish friends, because hopefully they will be able to, hear from one of the candidates and make a determination which way they're going to go.
Yeah, I think so. So before I hit the button, let's see. We've got some folks in the audience already and some comments here. So hi, Sarah. Glad to have you. Horatio says John Nickelson for sheriff. Mr. Greg Bell is in here. Of course, Christopher James Norris has followed us over from the Bossier Watch side into Louisiana Watch. So glad to have him here as usual. All right. So for those of you that don't know, I'm about to hit the countdown button. That gives us about 3 minutes or so, maybe 3.5. And that gives us time to share it out, you time to share the show out, tag some friends, make some popcorn, make you a stiff drink. And when we come back out of that, we'll ramble for just another minute or two and go ahead and have our guest on. How about that?
Sound like a plan to me.
All right, so here we go. We will be right back. Everybody, tag and share. We need to get the viewership up for Mr. Nickelson. This live broadcast is brought to you by Eagle Truck Center, soaring to new heights. The Outdoor News, fishing and outdoors for our area. Acadiana Mortgage, over 23 years in the mortgage business. SmarterGeek, making technology easier. And the many supporters, donations, and folks sharing information and watching out. Now, grab your popcorn and a drink. Here we go. Well, and here we are again. I've got to update those ads and go ahead and include Pelican Training for now. Anyway, but hey, we're relaunching the Louisiana Watch side of things, so.
Just trying to get it kicked back off. A lot of folks don't realize we tried to do it in the past, and it was a lot. We had a little bit as amateur journalists. We had a little bit of difficulty managing the Bossier Watch and the Louisiana Watch, and stretching our legs to cover politics outside of Bossier. And we think that we've sharpened our skill enough that we can manage it now. And here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Okay, so speaking of managing it, well, first of all, we want to thank everybody that's tuning in and watching. We're up to about 30-something people across all the platforms. And just so you know, we are streaming on YouTube and, of course, Facebook. And we're pushing live to Twitter. On Twitter, you have to look up Watch Louisiana. I had to reverse the name because somebody else got Louisiana Watch way back in 2017. But anyway, so we are streaming across all the platforms. But I'm going to go ahead and cue up cut one because you pointed out something interesting to me today. And it's something about synthetic media, synthetic pixels or something. Let's see here.
Yeah, so, this caught my eye. Normally, look, when the legislature convenes and then the regular session of the legislature, I go through all of the bills that are filed. A lot of people do that. I don't know, maybe a lot of people don't do it. But anyway, I do it. And I was just perusing through all the bills, looking at what our local legislators from Northwest Louisiana, have filed, and as well legislators from across the state. And anyway, this one just kind of jumped out at me. And this one here is, where's it at? Oh, yeah, okay. Relative to computer-related crime to create the crime of unlawful distribution of misleading synthetic media.
Synthetic media. I'm pretty sure that all of the media that we do is synthetic. It's all chemistry and chemicals combined.
Well, wait a minute. You're the tech guy in this operation, and you're telling me that you don't know what synthetic media is?
Well, I know what synthetic is. I know what media is. Therefore, I know what synthetic media. Now, whether this guy knows or whoever put this bill forward knows what synthetic media is, I have no idea.
Well, surely some of the folks watching this show, I see we're pushing about 50 across all platforms. So what exactly do any of y'all, do y'all have a clue about synthetic media, what they could be talking about here?
Yeah, I can't imagine. Dadgummit, that would mean if they passed this, we couldn't do our Thelma and Louise like we did over on the Bossier Watch side. What the heck?
Well, I have a theory. So here's what I think we're getting at here. So what I think we're getting at here is, so let's say y'all have seen these memes where they're making fun and joking about people. I don't know that it's probably targeted so much at that as it is that, with AI and all that, you could potentially show people doing criminal things and or morally reprehensible things. And then with the day and age of social media, you could put it out there and then it kind of pops out there and really hurts somebody. So,
well, maybe
what they're talking about?
Well, maybe this is not for public officials, because I hate to educate this legislator, whoever put this forward. There's this thing called parody, and there's also this thing called being a public official or public persona. And once you're a public official or public persona, the bar is much higher for things like deep fake videos and all that, and doing things in parody. I mean, parody, the history of parody goes back to basically the history of written language. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
definitely going
yeah,
to be some First Amendment issues with this garbage.
yeah. But what if? Okay, let's say what if we made a parody? We made a
Mm-hmm.
video, a parody video, and we
Mm-hmm.
made it of one of the candidates running for sheriff stuffing ballots for the election, and
Okay.
over the election debacle, and then we put it out there, and everybody was like, see, there's a video. He's actually did it."
Well, look, we've already got a video of you stuffing ballots, mail-in ballots anyway. Or I'll go off the cliff with you. Us theoretically, hypothetically, stuffing ballots. So I guess I could use my deep fake AI generator and put a particular sheriff's candidate's head in that.
What?
I guess that's what they're trying to target with this. But the problem is both the candidates are public officials.
Yeah, but we told the Secretary of State we were stuffing the ballot. So I mean,
I know. There's that. So, I don't know. This is a problem in search of a solution, or solution in search of a problem. I guess that would be the.
yeah, but I could see that there needs to be, because I mean, let me give you an example. What if somebody creates with this AI? What if they create some video of, let's say, you having an affair on your wife, and it caused you to get a divorce, and it caused all that? I mean, that isn't
Well,
right,
no,
right?
it's not right. But then again, I'm a tech guy. I'm pretty sure I could prove that the video is a fake, and I know video very well. But you're right. I mean, it would be a difficult deal. Yeah, I can. I can.
It's a tough one.
It's
It's
a
a
tough
tough
one,
one.
and I can see it for non-public persons. But again, remembering that once you're a public official, once you're an elected official, once you're a personality, a public personality, an actor, an actress, whatever public figure, Elon Musk, I don't know, whatever the persona, whoever the person is. Well, again, that bar is much higher for parody and being able to, sue for libel or slander or anything else.
Yeah, but I mean, parody is one thing, but you and I both know that political hacks can.
Oh, no.
We did a show not long ago about a political op,
Right.
and I could see political ops against even elected officials that would not be on the up and up, and I don't know. This is a difficult one, and I don't know that this legislature would be able to solve this one in one shot.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, why don't you go ahead and text our guest and let him know that it's about 7. Well, I guess it is 7:15. It's not about. And we'll see if we can get him in. Glad to have all the guests. And here's the way we do this if you're new. We don't really moderate the comments. As long as it's something that's not an obvious troll or spam, you're pretty much free to say what you want. I mean, we try to keep it, PG-13 rated. Let's say it that way, but free to ask anything. As the comments scroll by, I may randomly pick comments to display on the screen. And while our guest is on, and so tonight it's going to be John Nickelson, but when we have a guest on, go ahead and, feel free to fire off some comments. We may show some of them on the screen, may ask the candidate or may ask the guest, so that's the way that the kind of the rules of the show are. All right, let me hit the magic button here, Duke. Hi, look, we have a guest.
Hello, gentlemen.
Perfect. We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Just fine. Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, welcome to the show. Welcome to Louisiana Watch. Go ahead and why don't you spend a minute or so and introduce yourself?
Glad to do it. I am John Nickelson. I'm a candidate for Caddo Parish Sheriff. I didn't think I would be saying that in February of 2024 when we started this last summer, but as your listeners probably know, we've walked a long political road to get here, including an election challenge that went all the way up to the Supreme Court and back again, and exposed some really significant problems with our election system here in Caddo Parish. Honored to have the endorsement of outgoing Sheriff Steve Prater of the Fraternal Order of Police. Did a stint on the city council during which I worked hard to fight corruption that otherwise might have gotten past the public. And I'm excited to be able to once again share my message with voters and tell you why I'm the man for the job.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's get started, Mr. Lowry.
Yeah, well, John, appreciate all that and glad to finally get to chat with you. You know, I don't think you and I have ever had the benefit of actually talking to each other one-on-one, so I'm excited about that opportunity. But hey, did you hear us talking, you know, as a legislator, having been on the council, did you hear us talking about that bill, you know, with synthetic media? Did you hear that?
You know, I did, and I'll tell you, Duke, my opinion on that has evolved based on what I have seen just in the past week from the group called OpenAI. I mean, if you look at AI video that was possible a year ago, at least with what was publicly available, it was obviously fake. But OpenAI has released a tool, not to the public yet, but to some users called Sora. And if you're listening and you hadn't seen it, you ought to take a look. But it is indistinguishable to my eye from reality in some cases. So I absolutely wouldn't want to see First Amendment rights stymied, especially with respect to public officials and political candidates. But the fact that OpenAI can now be used to create things that are indistinguishable from reality, I think raises a lot of tough questions for Baton Rouge and D.C.
Fair point.
Yeah. So, sorry, Rex, I was already.
Oh, go ahead.
Y'all's so y'all had an election, and you know there was a lot of before your election, the past one, there was a lot of nationally. You know, we've got trouble in our election systems, and then overnight, here we are in Caddo Parish. We're at the forefront of it. I think for the most part, a lot of people, you know, but what parts of what took place in your race do you think that probably people don't realize about how y'all's election went sideways over there?
Yeah, look, I'll say first that I will confess to you both and to your listeners that I have not been somebody who has been particularly focused on election integrity. Always wanted to make sure the elections were fair and have supported that theoretically. But some of the problems that were uncovered during this election challenge in Caddo Parish really defied belief for me. You know, for example, we were sitting in the courtroom one day and a member of the Caddo Parish Board of Election Supervisors appointed by former Governor Edwards testified under oath that they were intentionally counting ballots that had not been witnessed because they wanted to make sure that as many votes possible were counted. We heard that they counted ballots that weren't signed at all. And I mean, think about what that means. You know, when you go to a voting booth,
Wow.
You've got to prove who you are. And that's how it ought to be. I mean, we want all fair legal votes to be counted and no crooked illegal votes to be counted. With these absentee ballots, the only verification of identity we have is that witness signature. That's it. So if you don't even have that, the ballot cannot be counted. So that was one significant issue. Another problem that we heard about during the election was ballot harvesting in nursing homes and other facilities, people signing many ballots as witnesses, which is against state law unless you're signing for a family member. You know, people who were not supposed to be on the voter rolls because they were, for example, mentally incapacitated and had been found to be by a court were left on. So, look, I will say, as I've said many times, I want everybody to have the opportunity to cast the ballot for the candidate that they want to support. That's what democracy is all about, and I'll never be opposed to that. But I don't want a system where we can't trust the outcome because the rules aren't followed at all, or worse, one set of rules is applied to one pile of ballots and another set of rules is applied to another.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. And, you know, just looking at the bigger picture, I think that court case had a lot of bearing, not just on Caddo, but on many of the parishes as a whole, you know, and, you know, we're over here in Bossier. I used to be on the board of election supervisors, so I know how that process works. Duke's been up to the courthouse many times during elections, and so we're fairly confident that on the Bossier side of things, the votes are counted fairly and all that. But boy, what was going on in Caddo over there? It just seemed from us watching from the news reports, just, I hate to say it, a lot of shenanigans going on.
Well, I'll just say again, it caused me deep concern. I'm hopeful that the national and in a few cases international attention we drew to this problem in Caddo Parish will result in a process that is more fair and equitable. But I got to tell you, my message to my voters and to your listeners is we got to turn out in numbers that make sure that the cheating that inevitably goes on in elections doesn't make the difference this time around.
All right, let's move on to some of the issues in the sheriff's race. What do you say, Mr. Lowry?
Yeah. So, John, I'll say this. I mean, you offered to debate. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
I did. Yeah, it's accurate. And in fact, a KTBS reporter called me and scheduled it, and he proposed a particular day. I said glad to do it. And then he called me back about a week later and said that my opponent had decided that he was not debating one more this time.
Yeah, I had heard that. I've not, again, like I said, I have never ever spoke to you. Not a day that I think I don't know that we've ever been able to meet, and I have never met Whitehorn or even been able to spoke to him. But I heard that there was an offer to a debate, and that you accepted, and Mr. Whitehorn didn't accept. So part of debate, you're able to get criticism, you're able to have dialogue, and I appreciate you coming on this show and being able to, have a question and answer. And so going through this race, you get criticism, and I know Mr. Whitehorn has gotten criticism, and that's just the way races are. You try to distinguish, the iron sharpens iron, right? So the criticism for you, some of the things that have been said, and I made a couple of the notes, and I wanted to, get your response to those, was one of the things is that Rex done went in there and butchered up my notes. Well, so I'm gonna have to go off my brain here.
I just added a few things there. They're pretty much still intact, mostly.
Yeah, you put a dadgum puzzle in there. Holy crap. Anyway, okay. Sorry about that, John. So one of the things is like, so stop and frisk, that supposedly that's a bad thing, that you're a proponent of stop and frisk, and Mr. Whitehorn is not. And, what do you say to that?
Well, look, I'll say first that, like both of you and every decent person, I'm opposed to all racially motivated policing. Nobody thinks that anybody should be targeted because of their race. I've never advocated for that. I would never allow it. Stop and frisk refers to something that goes on in every jurisdiction in the United States every day because it's an absolutely essential part of policing. This is what it involves. If the police or a sheriff's deputy has enough information to develop what's called reasonable suspicion that a crime is being committed, then he or she has the right to stop a suspect and engage them in conversation. And one of two things happens. Either probable cause for an arrest develops, meaning he confirms that a crime probably has been committed, right? Or, and this happens too quite frequently, the opposite occurs. He determines that there has not been a crime committed and the person goes on his way. The frisk piece of it is that if in that situation, a law enforcement officer has a reasonable suspicion that a person is armed, including with a deadly weapon, the person can be frisked. It's not a search for other things. It's an over-the-clothes frisk for weapons. And look, we cannot, law enforcement officers can't do their job if they can't engage people when they have reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed, and their lives, their literal lives would be on the line if they could not frisk people where they had a reasonable suspicion that a weapon was involved. This has been the law of the land for more than half a century. The Supreme Court of the United States decided way back in the 1960s that stopping and frisking under the circumstances I'm describing is lawful. So what my opponent has done with this issue is to try to racially divide our community and try to suggest that I am saying that we should target people based on skin color, which is just a flat lie.
So your position would be stop and frisk, would apply in the white community, and I don't know, Southern Trace just as much as it would apply anywhere else.
Look, 100%. If dispatch gets a call that there's a suspicious person who appears to be armed and dealing drugs on a street corner, whether that happens in Southern Trace or Broadmoor or Cedar Grove or the Cooper Road, that person needs to be checked out. And if police aren't allowed to do that, they can't do their job. They can't keep the community safe. So I have to think that my opponent knows better and that he is saying something he knows to be bad policy and untrue in an attempt to gain political advantage, which is disappointing.
Well, let me expand on that for just a second, Duke. So, of course, we know that you're not speaking for Whitehorn, but correct me if I'm wrong, he was chief of police at one time. Is that correct, over in Shreveport?
He was.
Okay. Do you know if during that time or any point in history, Shreveport has had a policy under Whitehorn or any of the other police chiefs, if they have had a policy of stop and frisk, or what the general policy and method that they use has been?
I know that during my years on the Shreveport City Council and based on media reports of Mr. Whitehorn's time as police chief, that yes, stopping criminal suspects when there's reasonable suspicion they've committed a crime and frisking them when there's a concern about a weapon that has reasonable basis has been a part of police work in Shreveport. He knows that.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah, and that's this is a wordplay. This is a political thing. It sounds like to me, because reasonable suspicion has always been the basis of law enforcement forever. A law enforcement and he had to have had that when he was with the state police, when he was with the marshals, the city. You're not advocating for anything other than what we've already been doing, which is if you have reasonable suspicion, you can make a stop. Right?
Well, I'll tell you both. I was very surprised that it became an issue at all, because I had no conception before we got started with this campaign that somebody with my opponent's background would stand up and say, for political reasons, we're going to discontinue all stop and frisk. It just doesn't make sense. It would be terrible policy.
So, speaking of backgrounds, so what is your background? And this has kind of been one of the critiques too, but what is your background overall? We know that you're obviously on the city council, but what is your background with law enforcement? What do you do for a living outside of being a city councilman?
So look, let's talk first about, because it leads into your question, what does the sheriff do in a parish where there are more than 600 full-time deputies, right? The sheriff manages a budget of more than $70 million, and he does that with no oversight from anybody else. The commission doesn't, as you both know, but your listeners may not, the commission doesn't approve his budget. The council doesn't approve his budget. The sheriff calls a meeting with himself every year and votes yes 1-0 for his own budget, and then closes the meeting. So the person in the sheriff's seat has total control over that money. Same thing with deputies. With police officers, we have something called civil service in Louisiana and in many other states, and that protects them from being fired or demoted or disciplined unless the rules around civil service are followed. Civil service doesn't apply to sheriff's deputies. And so the sheriff has total control to hire, fire, promote, demote, restructure all the people that work for the sheriff's office. And so, I say that to say the job is not one of being a patrol deputy. Patrolling the streets is a critically important function, but that's not what the sheriff does. It's not what Steve Prater has done for the past 25 years. It's not what Don Hathaway, who was a sheriff 20 years before him, and by the way, did not have a law enforcement background, did while he was sheriff. And then lastly, the sheriff sets policy. We just talked about stop and frisk. But if the sheriff of Caddo Parish orders his deputies, you're not doing stop and frisk anymore, they can't do it because they work for the sheriff, and the authority they have is borrowed from him as his deputies. So that's the third important thing a sheriff does. I have been a lawyer for almost 20 years. One of the things I have done as a lawyer is represent the Louisiana Commission on Law Enforcement for a part of my career. And that body is responsible for training all the law enforcement officers around the state. On the city council, I was a strong anti-corruption fighter. You all will recall the the unavoidable conflict I had with Adrian Perkins about issues like the insurance scandal that happened even before we got sworn in 18, or the recycling debacle where they wanted to give $10 million to a lady who had one Lexus SUV and no other equipment to pick up recycling from 180,000 people. Look, I would say to your listeners, my background as a lawyer and a councilman really ideally prepares me for what a sheriff actually does, right? Which is manage a large organization, handle money responsibly, tens of millions of dollars, and set policy that determines what deputies will and will not be able to do to keep us all safe. And there are a number of sheriffs around the state who were lawyers and did not have law enforcement experience when they started. So, look, my opponent has made a huge issue of that. But what people really ought to be listening to is the policies that I'm advocating and the policies that he's advocating. And I also would encourage people to look at our service to the city between 18 and 22. He was part of the Perkins administration. He was Adrian's right-hand man. Did you think that was the direction we needed to go? Or did you think that we needed to oppose some of those policies? And the bottom line is, if he gets elected, the Perkins gang is going to move over into the sheriff's office. I mean, some of the very same people who supported Perkins and worked for him are now running the campaign trail every day with Henry Whitehorn. And there's no doubt in my mind that if he were elected, they would be part of the team running the sheriff's office.
Wow. Well, considering that, and again, one of the things, in some of the, I guess you could say, the more conservative circles, one of the criticisms that I hear, is they say, well, Mr. Nickelson, while he was a councilman, he had one of those, he tried to put an ordinance, I think, forward pertaining to something to do with you trying to penalize somebody for if they left their car unlocked and they had a gun in their car or something to that nature. Explain what you were trying to do and explain that so people understand, because I really don't understand it, to be honest with you.
Let me say first, because as you can imagine, I get this question quite a lot. I am fully supportive of the Second Amendment. It's at the top of the list of amendments for a reason. I hunt. I own weapons that I rely on to defend my wife and 4 kids. I've got everything from a handgun to an AR-15 and weapons in between. So I just want to say out of the gate, I will never, ever as sheriff do anything to infringe anybody's gun rights. I've been asked the question, would you disarm people if you were ordered to do so by the federal government? And my answer has been, I would sooner resign than do that. Right. So I will never do that. And if anybody has a concern about that, hear me about that. I am not going to do anything to infringe your Second Amendment rights. The legislation you're talking about came about in this way years ago. The police chief at the time, Ben Raymond, great guy, did a great job under very difficult circumstances, a lot of respect for him, came to us and he said, look, we're having 500 plus guns stolen out of cars every year. Almost always unlocked, almost always overnight. And so the normal course of events is we have really teenagers that are younger than you would believe in a lot of cases, roaming the streets at night and checking door handles. And if the door is open, they open the car and all they do is look for a gun. I mean, I live in South Highlands. We have this problem. You can leave money in your car. I mean, not that you should, but I have made the mistake on a couple of occasions of leaving something you'd think somebody would want to steal. And all they did is open my door, pop my center console, look in my glove box to look for a weapon, and they left everything else. So he came to us and said, this is a problem. Many of these guns are being used in violent crimes, including homicides. Can you do something? And look, I had a lot of great ideas on the city council. This is one that didn't pan out, and was not a good idea ultimately. But my thought was, let's have a very nominal financial penalty for somebody who leaves a weapon unsecured in an unlocked car overnight. The legislation didn't pass. I didn't bring it back up again. Not something I'm going to pursue as sheriff. But I understand that for some people that's a point of concern. But if the Second Amendment is at the top of your list and it's important to me, consider the fact that my opponent is endorsed by a group that is very, very progressive and liberal on gun control. So I understand that for some people I might not be the perfect candidate on this issue because of what I've just explained. But you have a choice between one or the other, and I am much more conservative and much more supportive of Second Amendment rights than my opponent is.
All right. So my litmus test for every candidate, whether it's dog catcher, is on the Second Amendment, period, because I'm a purist with that. So do you support the constitutional carry bills, such as the ones, there's one in the legislature right now and on the Senate side, but do you support the constitutional carry bills that Danny McCormick has been trying to push forward through the legislature?
I know that there's more than one constitutional carry bill making its way through the legislature. I understand Alan Seabaugh has sponsored one that's a little bit different than Danny McCormick's. I confess I don't know the details. This is what I'll say about that. I absolutely believe everybody has a right to carry a weapon to defend himself. I hope that what comes out of this session does at least encourage people to get some training if they're going to carry a weapon every day, right? I'm not saying that people shouldn't be able to if they decide not to get that training, but if you're going to carry a handgun, that's just true if you're a police officer, a sheriff's deputy, if you're in the military, you both know you've got to train with it. Even to know how to operate it, you got to train with it. And to be accurate with it, other than at a point blank range, you've got to spend some time learning how to use that weapon safely. So look, I don't think it is a bad thing for people to have some training before they carry a weapon concealed, but I recognize that concealed carry constitutional carry is going to pass. There's no question about that. I'm not going to speak in opposition to it, and I will work with that as the next sheriff.
And you may not be familiar with this yet, but if you're elected sheriff, are you going to keep Caddo Parish as a member of the Louisiana Sheriff's Association?
Yes.
Okay.
So one of the other things I'll tell you what I've heard, and I'm just throwing it out there. This is one of the things, and this one, I heard that the blue light camera thing, or what was the name of the company? I can't remember anyway. That the camera issue that yourself and Grayson Butcher, he's a good guy. I like Grayson, and we've had him on a show before. And this is kind of the whisper campaign, I guess you could say, is that the other side actually got y'all to bring it forward and got y'all on board with it, and that they were the ones that really wanted it, but they were able to trick y'all into doing it somehow or another, or that y'all supported it. What's your thoughts on that? Is that accurate, inaccurate, or do you still think the cameras is a good thing? And is that something that you as a sheriff would be wanting to try to push out in the parish?
Well, I mean, let me answer your last question first. I do not think pushing that out into the parish would be a good idea. There have been some really significant problems with the execution of that camera system in the city. I mean, things like people getting tickets for times when the school zones were not active, attempting to go through an appeal process and having, not getting an answer at all, or being told that the appeal process is going to be more expensive than the ticket. So that has not worked well. My recollection of how the legislation came to be is that the administration and the police chief came to us and said, look, this would be a good thing. It would slow down speeders in school zones, and that's a safety problem. We were presented data indicating that there was quite a lot of speeding, sometimes double plus the speed limit in school zones. I've got 4 kids. That concerned me. But the implementation of that has not gone well in Shreveport, in my estimation. And no, I'm not going to use speed light or red light cameras in the parish as a sheriff.
Well, we had been communicated to us that was something that Mr. Whitehorn did want to try to do in the parish. Have you heard that as well?
I have not. I've heard lots of other things that concern me, but I haven't heard that he wants to do that in the parish. I have heard that some of the folks associated with his campaign, which I won't name because I don't have verification, have an interest in that contract and would like to see it expanded.
So we've been, talking about expanding stuff from Shreveport out into the parish with, the cameras, and you're obviously not for that. Let's kind of reverse that and talk about bringing the parish into the city. There's been some discussion in the past about the sheriff's department assisting the Shreveport Police Department with the murder rate and high violent crime rate that's in Shreveport proper. What is your opinion if you're elected sheriff, or do you have any plans to offer assistance? I mean, what's your thinking on that? Should the sheriff's department be assisting SPD?
Well, look, I'll say first that the sheriff's office already assists SPD. That's already happening. And one of the things that my opponent has said that has caused some anger among deputies over the past week is that he was caught on camera complaining that the sheriff's office provides no assistance. He said they didn't do anything during Mardi Gras, which was false. And in fact, just last week, or perhaps it was the week before, a sheriff's deputy was shot executing a warrant on a murder suspect within the city limits of Shreveport. So the sheriff's office is already manning and providing funding for a variety of joint task forces that operate throughout the parish. And if the global question is, will the sheriff's office support SPD in the ways that it can? I mean, of course, the crime doesn't know a city boundary. And what happens in Shreveport affects the rural areas and vice versa. There's discussion about the sheriff's office overtaking or assuming responsibility for patrolling a large part of the city. I will tell you, the personnel numbers on that just do not work out, right? I mean, there are not enough sheriff's deputies to provide coverage over a large part of the city. Now, could outlying areas of the city in some cases be patrolled by sheriff's deputies while they are covering areas of the parish, right, that intersect with them? Yes. But I mean, the principal thing that the sheriff's office can continue to do, in my opinion, for the city is using these task forces to focus on identifying and apprehending violent criminals, right? I mean, the sheriff's office has a very talented team. The captain of investigations, for example, Bobby Herring, runs a great operation. John Mays, the captain of patrol. Those men and others like them have expertise that they have used and will continue to use to keep the entire parish safe. So, the suggestion that the sheriff's office has not historically supported the city it's just not correct.
Luke, you got another one?
Well, just a generalized question, and we'll kind of start wrapping up. And we appreciate your frankness. I mean, and look, and you're taking all the questions, and I respect that as a candidate. You're taking it. So, two questions. One, I heard that your opponent said that on the day that he was elected, that basically a lot of people were going to be just released out of jail over there in the parish jail. And it wasn't clear to me exactly in what he was talking about doing. I mean, last I checked, if someone was convicted and they're in jail over there, I mean, how does he have the authority to just release them out of jail? And do you know what he was talking about?
Yeah, so this is what I know about that. In the days following the November election, when Whitehorn and his team thought they had won, they sat down for an interview on video, much like the one we're doing on the internet. And his campaign manager, a guy named Josh Williams, who also was Adrian Perkins' campaign manager, by the way, a number of years ago, said words to the effect of, if Sheriff Whitehorn takes office in July, he and the district attorney, James Stewart of Caddo Parish, will have the overcrowding problem solved by Labor Day. You're on the Bossier side of the river and don't have all the problems that we do, but Caddo Correctional Center is designed to hold roughly 1,070 pretrial detainees and some state convicts. It's got on a good day almost 1,500 people incarcerated. So the only way to eliminate the overcrowding problem there in 60 days would be to somehow release almost 500 prisoners. Could the sheriff do that unilaterally? Shouldn't be able to, but could he work with the DA to get that done and reduce people's bonds or kind of do an ad hoc bail reform effort, which Whitehorn has also talked about? I suppose so. But look, the fact that a sheriff's candidate or his key political supporters are talking, not talking about how can we keep crime victims safer? How can we reduce violent crime? But instead are talking about releasing people accused of serious crimes from jail. It just makes me feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. That's not what being the sheriff is all about, or should be.
So let's stay on that jail issue for a second. So in the past, I think it was a couple of years ago, and I don't remember all the specifics, but there were apparently some shenanigans going on at the Caddo jail that got widely publicized involving the current Sheriff Prater. And I like Steve Prater, he's a nice guy, but um, have those, do you know if those problems have been addressed, or maybe describe for everybody what authority and power the sheriff does have over the parish jail over there?
Well, the sheriff doesn't own Caddo Correctional Center. The commission does, the Caddo Commission. But the sheriff is responsible for holding in his custody all the pretrial detainees in this parish. But he executes the orders of the judges of our district court, right? And in some cases, federal prisoners are held through an agreement with the United States Marshal. But the sheriff does not decide when a person comes and goes from his jail. Sheriff Prater has done a really good job over the years of explaining that the principal reason that we have an overcrowding problem in Caddo in our jail is that the amount of time it takes from the point of arrest to resolution of a case, whether by plea or a trial, has gotten longer and longer in recent years. And in fact, the Department of Justice sponsored a study at his request that was released earlier this year, and it confirmed that exactly what he's been saying is true. So the principal solution to that problem is that we can't have people spending 5+ years in jail in pretrial detention, which is happening in some cases at the outside. And look, that's not good for anybody, right? It's not good for somebody who's accused of a crime. It's not good for the public. It's not good for crime victims. I mean, can you imagine being one of your family members being a murder victim, for example, and having to wait 5+ years for a resolution? So we've got to work as a unit, as all the stakeholders, the judges, the DA, and prioritize public safety. And one way to do that is to move cases more efficiently and more quickly through the court system.
So I got another question. And this is completely off the topic of jails and, the whole situation there. But it just came to mind because, I had a phone call that reminded me of it today. Anyway, so the sheriff is the head tax collector in the parish, correct? So Bobby Edmonston, who's the tax assessor over here, has famously told me, look, I just assess the taxes. I don't have to go out and collect them. So maybe, I know this is kind of a definite side rail here, but maybe describe the process so the folks know about the collection of taxes and the sheriff's role in that, and the sheriff's department's role in that.
Well, as you just mentioned, the assessor makes the assessment on property throughout the parish periodically. Every year, the sheriff's office sends out a tax bill. If you've got a mortgage on a personal residence, then often your mortgage company will pay that tax bill directly to the parish. If you own your house outright or don't have an escrow, you would pay that. And if you don't pay, and look, this is how it has to be, there is a process by which your property ultimately will be seized and sold to pay taxes. So that the sheriff is responsible for all of that. And, look, the tax collection component of the job is not what people focus on during the campaign for sheriff, but that part of the job is something that, serving as a lawyer for almost 2 decades, and as a council member, prepares me well for it. I mean, and look, in terms of how the sheriff actually spends his time day to day, a very large percentage of it is spent on the civil side of the sheriff's office, which includes the tax office.
Okay, great.
Well, in closing, I'm going to make an observation, and then and ask you just kind of close and wrap up. How old are you?
44.
Well, I was going to make I don't know that anybody's made the distinction. You seem like a young man. You've been around a while. It doesn't mean you're a kid by no stretch of the imagination. But you're a younger fella. I think Mr. Whitehorn is an older fella, and not that an older person, can't run for office, can't do the job. That's not that at all. But this Sheriff Prater was in there for a long time
Yeah.
and done a wonderful job. I think he's been a highly respected sheriff. I mean, I can tell you, no offense to you, but I wish he could be in there for the rest of my lifetime. I mean,
Let me interject, Duke. I'd have been very pleased for Sheriff Prater to seek another term. And if that were the situation we're in, that'd be fine with me. But he decided to retire. He earned a retirement, and that's why we're talking today.
yeah. So, what makes you better than Mr. Whitehorn? And, why should you be the sheriff over him? I mean, I don't like, just like I really don't know you. I don't know him to say whether he's a good guy or a bad guy. I know that oftentimes politics and campaigns, it makes people appear one way or the other. What makes John Nickelson better than, Henry Whitehorn to be the next sheriff of Caddo Parish?
Look, I would say a number of things. One, you mentioned age. I haven't spent a lot of time talking about that, but this parish really has benefited from continuity of leadership in the sheriff's office. And it's true throughout the state that sheriffs often serve for decades. Just as a function of biology, Mr. Whitehorn is not going to be able to serve more than about one term. He would be almost 74 years old by the time he finished a single term as sheriff. So I agree with you that in some circumstances, older people can hold office and do an excellent job, but we're all subject to the frailties of the human condition. And as people get into their 70s and beyond, many people slip. I mean, that's true in my family. I suspect it may be true in yours as well. So that's not a positive. I mean, he's retired from several jobs and he's at the very end of his career. It's not clear to me why this is a good time for him to pick up a new position given his age and where he is in life. But look, the bottom line in terms of why I'm a better choice than my opponent, especially if you are a person who believes in a conservative philosophy and a tough on crime philosophy, is that the public now has had 9 months. At least until Mr. Whitehorn decided he would stop talking to the public and wouldn't debate, but has had many, many opportunities to hear us discuss how we will run the sheriff's office and what policies we will implement. We talked about stop and frisk, which is a great example of a very stark contrast between me and him. I am pro law enforcement on that. I'm pro Constitution because it's absolutely constitutional. He is pro tying the hands of deputies for political reasons. We talked about the jail, why a sheriff's candidate in Caddo Parish would campaign on bail reform, right? And have his campaign manager talk about working with the DA to let hundreds of people out of prison in 60 days. I don't understand, but that's not the priorities you need from your sheriff. You need a sheriff who will be tough on crime and prioritize public safety, right? Rather than crime victims. Rather than criminals who are committing the crimes. And then lastly, he has spent a lot of time in terms of policy talking about how he would like to divert some of the office's financial resources to different social programs. I am in no way opposed to people having their needs met. And sometimes the government has a role in that, right? Public education, for example, is a really important government-funded good that we all benefit from. I've got 4 kids that have received an excellent education in Caddo Parish public schools, and I'm grateful for that. But social program funding is not the job of the sheriff. The sheriff should never be talking about funding NGOs with uncertain purposes. The purpose of the sheriff's office is to keep the parish safe on the criminal justice end. So the choice is about who is going to set policies at the top, and our different positions make clear that my vision for the parish is going to keep us safer, and his is not. And that's the bottom line. The only other thing I would say about this is he talks a lot about experience, but the last job he had was as Adrian Perkins' chief administrative officer. And that's a stone cold fact. And I worked with and against him and Adrian for years. And so understand that if a group that was willing to run the insurance scam that they did before we got sworn into office, where they moved a six-figure commission from an individual who didn't do the work to an individual who did. And look, I should say, because I've been reminded of this, Whitehorn wasn't there at the time, but the person from Adrian's administration who actually did that, the bag lady, is campaigning with him every day. So, or the recycling contract. I mean, we were sitting in the room in Government Plaza having a conversation about whether or not an individual who's totally unqualified should get $10 million. And I was able to kill that. Well, Whitehorn's the CAO of the city. He didn't do anything to kill that. He sat silent. So in the council context, in city government context, there are checks and balances. There is a council that can say no, and at least there's public discussion. With the sheriff, there's no public discussion, and there's no check. There's no council. There's nobody to tell the sheriff no. So if you want to talk about experience, I would ask voters to compare the work I did as a corruption fighter on the city council with the work Whitehorn did supporting Adrian Perkins, and make a decision about which of those two visions and philosophies you want to run the sheriff's office. And I'm convinced that I am the better choice, and I hope voters will see it that way on March 23rd.
Well, you did a pretty good job there, comparing and contrasting your differences, and voters definitely have a distinct difference. The election, the primary was not close. I mean, I think you were ahead by, 10 points, if I remember right.
Yes.
The runoff was obviously, I would say, neck and neck, if not even. The one vote difference, and then we all know about the court case. So the voters definitely have a distinct choice coming up in this election. When is the election?
March 23rd. Early voting starts March 9th. March 9th is a Saturday. We take a day off for March 10th, which is a Sunday, and you got the whole week through March 16th, which is another Saturday vote. And I would say to people on that, I heard all kinds of explanations for why friends and supporters were not able to vote during the last election. The best was an emergency appendectomy. The worst was duck camp and things in between. But don't wait. Go vote early. You don't know what's going to happen. The weather might be bad. You might get sick. You might have to go out of town. This is the most important election in a generation. It's really not just about the next 4 years. It's about the next 25 years in terms of who controls the sheriff's office. So if I'm fortunate enough to have your support, my request to you is go vote, work your phone, text and call everybody you know to make sure that they vote, and just recognize that other than taking care of your personal business and doing what you had to do for your family and your job, this sheriff's election really is the most important thing going on.
Absolutely. All right, Mr. Lowry, anything else?
I just want to say good luck to Mr. Nickelson, and we appreciate you coming on. And, look, John, to those watching, John had no idea what questions we were going to ask. I told him that we were going to press him, across the board, and he said, bring it on. Hat tip to any candidate that is willing to put themselves out there and, take the arrows, and John Nickelson did it. So good luck to you, Mr. John.
Yeah, good luck and thank you.
If I'm on the right side of this thing, invite me back and we'll talk again.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, take care.
All right, thank you. Well, that was an interesting discussion, and like you, I don't really know John and can't think of any interactions I've had in the past, but I did learn quite a bit this evening.
Yeah, I've never had an occasion to, have any dealings with Mr. Nickelson. And, when they had that race going on in the beginning of the year, I was real intrigued by that. And I was even more intrigued when I seen that thing come down to one vote. That just blew my mind. But I got to say, I appreciate being able to talk to him. I'd really like to hear. I've never spoke to a Whitehorn. I would be
I
interested
don't
to
think I have
hear,
either.
how he speaks and how he comes across. I just never have. I'd be
Yeah.
interested there too.
So I just put up an interesting reminder from Donna Bartlett. She said citizens are allowed to go to the registrar of voters office and watch the absentee ballot process. It is an open meeting, folks. She is absolutely correct. Generally, when you go in there, you're sequestered in, so you can't leave until the process is over. And they generally ask you to turn your phones off, not use your phones, and all that, so you can't inadvertently influence the election or voters in any way and all that. But absolutely, it is an open process. Thank you for reminding everybody, Ms. Donna.
Yeah, we had a lot of comments going up through there. I wasn't reading all of them, but quite a few.
Yeah. So we want to thank everybody that's watching. Y'all remember, again, we keep saying it, tag and share this out. Head over to the YouTube channel. If you're watching us on Facebook, while you're at it, go over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, because, if you don't know our history, Duke and I do Bossier Watch every Tuesday night, and that's, obviously mostly Bossier focused. And we started doing Louisiana Watch, did, a few dozen shows with it, and it just got to be a big issue of time in our day jobs. But we've decided to relaunch it again after about a year, and here we are with our second show since the relaunch. We're going to try to keep it guest-centric. And Duke, I think you've got some pretty good guests lined up and on the burner, so.
Yeah, I do. And to name a few, we've got the Deputy Secretary of, Insurance in Louisiana. We've got him in the works to come on a show to talk about insurance in Louisiana. I mean, it's hard to believe that anyone would have a problem with insurance in Louisiana, but, apparently there's a few of us out there. The newly elected Treasury Secretary, Mr. John Fleming. A lot of folks would remember him. He's one of our past congressmen up in this district, and he's in the works to come on the show. Several others. We're working on trying to get the new Wildlife and Fisheries Secretary. She is, hadn't been able to get in touch with her. She's a tough one. But we are going to have that one on here.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about with the wildlife and fisheries. So, and also one other thing. So you see the logo down in the lower corner over there underneath Duke, the Outdoor News logo. We're also starting to do some outdoor stuff. And as a matter of fact, we released a video about crawfish farming today, our first video in that series. So go check out the Outdoor News on Facebook. It's also on YouTube. You just have to do a little searching for it. And check us out on that channel if you want to know about the outdoors in general.
Hey, I think you ought to play that little short video if you can. And how good of a tech guy are you? Show everybody.
Hold on a minute. Let me hold on just a second.
Y'all, I just threw a challenge out at him in the last minute. So the measure of how good of a tech guy he is, he's on the spot here.
Yeah, of course I was not prepared.
He was dancing on a cottonmouth or something.
Part of the thing that we want to show you is what all is involved in crawfish farming before crawfish season even gets here.
In farming, there's a thing called farmer's luck. You get up, you have a plan to go work, and as soon as you get there to go work, you find out the first thing you got to do is not what you had planned to do.
I'll just pause it right there.
That's good enough.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, we encourage everybody to do that. Obviously, if you want to, check out Bossier Watch as well. We're glad to have everybody. We're going to try to do these every Thursday evening at about 7 o'clock. We're going to try to let them last about an hour, however long the conversation goes. And I guess that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's all I have. Appreciate everybody, and we will see y'all next Thursday.
All right. Thank you. And we are out of here. I'm going to hit the finish button right about now.